Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. Please be sure to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, and at Reading with Your Kids on Instagram. Our guest today is the author of the Polio Pioneer picture book biography of Dr. Jonas Salk. Her name is Linda Marshall. Before we invite Linda in, I want to tell you about a really fun way for your kids to learn. It's called Cat's Roblox Challenges and Friends. Let's Go Camping. This is a virtual camp that is offered by our friend Kat Blount. Kat Blount is a wonderful children's author. She has been featured here on the podcast in the past, and she wants to invite your kids to visit Camp Catawaka, where you will have fun and thrive with fellow campers in this week-long Roblox experience. Now, what Kat has done is she's using the Roblox gaming platform to develop really cool learning experiences for small groups of kids. It's secure. It's only those kids that have signed up with their parents, and the kids are aged 10 to 12 that will have access. Kat is online playing with the kids. The kids have lots of fun, and they'll also learn a number of really important life skills like communication, team building, listening and attention, management, budgeting, problem solving, critical thinking, following directions, memory recall, socialization. Socialization is so important right now, especially when kids aren't able to spend time with their friends. Check it out today. Go to outschool.com/teachers/cat-blount, BLOUNT. So that's outschool.com/teachers/cat-blount. And find out about Camp Catawaka and all the fun your kids can have. Joining us right now from the New York City area, she is the author of a really timely book. We have something to celebrate. The name of the book is The Polio Pioneer, Dr. Jonas Salk and the Polio Vaccine. Please welcome to the show, Linda Marshall. Linda, how are you?
I'm fine, Jed. Thank you very much for hosting me and for talking about the book, The Polio Pioneer. I really appreciated it, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Yes, it's, I am old enough to remember polio. One of the kids in my neighborhood had polio when I was younger, and it's been eradicated here in the United States, but it still exists. We just heard, I was just telling Linda before we started recording, that the World Health Organization is celebrating that while polio has been eradicated in Africa, they have not had a case of kids contracting polio in over a year.
That is such amazing and wonderfully good news. The disease, I remember polio too. I'm also old enough to remember it, and that's why I wrote the book, because I remember being not allowed to go certain places, like to the movie theater or to be in crowds, to go to sleepovers, or to swim in a lake that was, maybe you knew it, Jed. I grew up in Boston too. It was called Crystal Lake in Newton, and I was not allowed to swim there. It was nicknamed Polio Pond. There was a great deal of fear about polio. Everybody had to basically watch where they were going, hunker down, be really careful that people didn't get polio, because polio could mean paralysis. It could mean death. It was a fear that pervaded everything. So I remember finally being whisked away from Boston. My mother was worried, very worried one year. The polio epidemic had really gotten very big in Boston, and so she took my brother and me, and we left Boston, and we went to Connecticut, where she was from, and where there wasn't quite as much polio. But it was a big thing, much the way people are leaving cities right now because of COVID. Mm-hmm. People left urban areas then because of polio. Yeah. And as we know, with polio, it can be eradicated. The problem can be solved, so we can hope that someday soon, there will be a vaccine for COVID-19.
Yeah. Talk a little bit. You mentioned that if you contracted polio, that you could die, you could become paralyzed. Remind us or tell folks who, because there are a lot of folks who are in their 20s or 30s who aren't aware of polio because it has been eradicated in the United States for a long time. Was polio a virus? Was it just what was it?
So polio, much like the flu, is also a virus. Mm-hmm. In fact, what Dr. Jonas Salk did is he first developed a flu vaccine that would teach the body, give the body sort of a practice run against the flu virus. And it's the same system that he used way back then, is to develop a flu vaccine is still the same ideas. Of course, they've been, changed over time. The way that things are produced have been changed over time, but it's still the same concept that a vaccine can work to teach the body, to give the body a practice run that will be helpful in fighting a virus. And that idea that worked for the flu also works for polio and hopefully will work for COVID.
Yeah. There's a lot of folks who, I guess the term is anti-vaxxers. A lot of folks out there that are afraid of vaccines and are refusing to have their kids vaccinated. Do you have any understanding of that at all? Do you have any idea what they're afraid of?
Well, it seems to me that people who didn't grow up with those fears would think that it's just more chemicals or whatever in the body. So, to me that, I can kind of get it. But I saw kids who had polio. There was a little boy up my street who had polio. He walked with a limp always after getting it. There's something called post-polio syndrome. So when somebody has polio, often they'll have lasting problems that may not show immediately, but may take quite a long time before they show. But if they're all related to having had the polio virus, I think people just don't understand how important it is to eradicate these diseases. And, for example, I've been doing some research on Henry David Thoreau, and the great philosopher, also from Boston, mm-hmm. And his brother, John. He was very, very close with his brother, John, and John and he took a wonderful canoe trip down the Merrimack and Concord rivers, I think, and later, Henry David Thoreau wrote about it. He wrote about it later after John died. Why did John die? John contracted tetanus. Mm. He got it. It's one of those diseases that we hear, you can step on a rusty nail, or something can happen. John happened to inadvertently cut himself while he was preparing to shave, and he cleaned off the cut and did all the right things, but he got tetanus, and tetanus is fatal. Mm-hmm. And tetanus is one of those things that we can get vaccines for. So thank goodness for vaccines. And I have to tell you, I did not write this because I wanted to tout the importance of vaccines. I wrote this because I wanted to tout how much Jonas Salk is my personal hero, because he saved so many, many people And he did that through vaccines. So thank you, Dr. Salk.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Jonas Salk, the person.
Oh, what a great guy. He was interested in so very many things. And here's something really fun. He was, early on, when he was in medical school or perhaps doing his early research, I can't remember exactly what, he and his wife lived in this little cabin and kind of played pioneer and, chopped wood and heated with wood and, it's really kind of cute. He grew up, he was the child and grandchild of immigrants. His family was Jewish. They had come from Russia and Lithuania because they'd been persecuted in both places and moved to New York City. His mother was a dynamo. She just wanted the very best for her kids' education, and she helped them a lot. Jonah wound up going to City College, which was free and it allowed Jews, and a lot of schools at that point did not. And he fell in love with chemistry. He just adored it, and while he was there, decided that one of the things he always wanted to do was to make the world a better place, wanted to give back, and he decided he would give back by becoming a doctor and a researcher.
Beautiful. One of the things that you mentioned was that City College was that they accepted Jews into their school. I think a lot of people listening to this would kind of shake their head, scratch their head, and say, "Wait a minute! Jewish people weren't allowed to go to college. How crazy is that?"
Yeah, that's called prejudice. It's something we know very well these days. We know it in terms of anti-Semitism. We know it in terms of anti-Muslim. We know it in terms of anti-black, anti-brown, anti-lots of things. It's a very sad part of this nation.
Yeah. And, what I'm thinking is, here is this person who is experiencing prejudice, who was the child of immigrants, and he saved the world from this deadly virus. And just thank God that City College had the vision to allow him into the college. Imagine if he hadn't had a chance to learn and become a doctor and to find this vaccine. This may still be plaguing us here in the United States today.
Right. Yeah. That's all of this energy, people wanting to give back to make the United States and the world a better place it's really a very heartwarming, magical thing. And I think it's what can make our country and does make our country really a beautiful place, and a place that welcomes innovation and creative thinking. And if only we can harness all of the languages, all of the thought patterns, all of the beauty of the world, and somehow create a more beautiful, better society. Just think.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, as you're speaking, if somehow we could train ourselves and hopefully pass this on to our kids, to when they see another person, to see all the potential that person may have. Yeah, I'm sure when he was a kid, I don't necessarily think that people looked at Jonas Salk and thought, hey, one day this kid's going to grow up to cure polio and to change the world. But somebody looked at him and said, this kid has potential. We should let this kid flourish and give this kid all the opportunity he needs to flourish and to become the man he is meant to be. if only we could look at every person we encounter with that same thought.
Right, right.
Yeah.
We also have to give credit to the people kids who get pushed down and don't let it get to them, who just have that power, whatever that spark, that push or chutzpah or whatever you want to call it, to just keep pushing and fighting and making it. Because it happens to an awful lot of people who get told they're just not very good, or they just can't do something, or they just don't have it. And those are negative messages that happen all the time, but there needs that ability of every single person to do something well and to share it with the world is something that we really need to celebrate.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really wish that we would use that word chutzpah more. I love that word. It's a word that I heard a lot growing up. And it's a cool to when someone says, "Hey kid, you got a lot of chutzpah." I love that. It's, you hear grit, resiliency. They're good words. They're good virtues to have. But it's not as cool to me as when someone says, "Hey kid, you got a lot of chutzpah."
It's funny because I've always thought the word is really complimentary, and truth is I probably have a lot more chutzpah than I probably should have. So, because I just like to say, well, that's not right, or this is right, or let's, and not that I'm making value judgments. That sounds like a value judgment, so forgive me for that. But just trying to make things a little bit better and trying to have the wherewithal to do it and the self-assurance. And to celebrate that kind of stuff. I should tell you that I got in a lot of trouble when I was a little kid for having self-assurance. But, it really comes in handy as a grown-up. So we really need to nurture that.
It really does. It's interesting that you created this biography of Dr. Jonas Salk. What do you, when you sit down to start a writing project, what are you looking for? What kind of characters do you love writing about?
I have a wide range of interests, and Dr. Salk was the first person I wrote about who was a personal hero of mine. But I'm interested in so many things. So when I decide I want to write about a person, I look for what makes them sparkle. What's something in them that I would like to share with other people? What would I like to have as a part of me? How do I, as I write a biography, because I try to internalize a lot of the person, how do I do it? I mean, there's so many questions at the beginning. And when I first came up with this idea, which I had been holding on to for a long time, I was lucky enough to go to the Salk Institute in La Jolla, California, and I got a personal tour of the Salk Institute. And I have to thank Dr. Peter Salk, who was Dr. Jonas Salk's son, for arranging that tour for me. And I just learned a lot about him, about his perseverance, about how hard he worked day and night, about his kindness, about how much he really wanted to make the world better.
I think that's really wonderful. I wish I had a chance to have met Dr. Salk.
Oh, don't we all? Don't we all? He really changed our childhoods. He let us go swimming and Crystal Lake and stop calling it Polio Pond. He let us go to the movie theaters, without being afraid of getting sick. There were so many changes he made in our lives and really protecting us from a terrible disease.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What a hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I'm thinking as families read this book together, The Polio Pioneer, you know, there's so many great conversations about being selfless, about, you know, having chutzpah, about this great achievement. I also think that families could have a wonderful time thinking, imagining who is going to be the COVID Salk, who is going to be the COVID pioneer, who is going to find a vaccine that is going to enable us to get back together and stand closer than 6 feet apart from each other. Right.
But it may be lots of different vaccines. Who knows which one is going to work the best. And it could be that there's a vaccine for, you know, people who are under 5 years old or people who are over 75 years old. We just don't know this, but who will it come from? What ideas, what innovations? Will it be a vaccine that, you know, we take orally, something that we get a shot in, something that we ingest through our noses and just squirt that way? Who will come up with these wonderful ideas and test and test and test? Mm-hmm. I wonder. Yeah. And I think it's going to be teams of people from all over the world working together, and hopefully, like Jonas Salk, they will not be trying to make a fortune doing that. Their fortune will be the good fortune of saving the world.
Yeah. Hey, we didn't touch on that. You know, I imagine that a guy who created a polio vaccine, you know, could have held out and forced people to pay tons and tons of money for the vaccine. But that's not what happened with Dr. Salk.
No, he said he couldn't patent it. Who could patent the sun? Who could patent the sun? So he wanted the world to be a better place, and he believed in hope. He believed in dreams. He said, I'm going to quote from him right now, "Hope lies in dreams, in imagination, and in the courage of those who dare to make dreams into reality."
Wow. Powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. Yeah. I'm so happy that you created and wrote the Polio Pioneer. So many conversations we can have with our kids. I think it can give our kids lots of hope at this time where so many kids, so many adults are feeling hopeless and helpless. I think it can also be a good way to talk to our kids about the fact that how fortunate we are, those of us who live in countries like the United States, the UK, other developed countries, to understand that there are lots and lots of diseases out there that have been pretty much eradicated in our countries that folks are still fighting against in developing countries. And hopefully we can start to teach our kids to have some empathy for folks that are living in those places.
Right. There are all sorts of things our kids don't have to worry about anymore. Mm-hmm. You know the story about Balto, the dog who was one of the dogs who helped lead the sled team, getting the serum to kids in Alaska so that they had gotten sick with, now I can't even remember it, the disease where diphtheria, where your breathing apparatus closes down. Mm-hmm. And when it closes down, there's like you can't breathe, you can't get any air, and you die. And there is now a vaccine. It's part of the DPT, diphtheria, tetanus, and typhoid, I think. Mm-hmm. Not typhoid. Diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus. That prevents that. And these are wonderful, wonderful things, and I think we need to celebrate them.
Yeah,
we must celebrate them.
Absolutely. Before we started the interview, I went over to your website, lindamarshall.com, and saw all the beautiful books that you've written. Just real quickly, I have to ask because I'm a magician, and the book that jumped out to me on your page was Grandma Rose's Magic. Can you just tell me a little bit about Grandma Rose and why she was so magical?
So I wish she did actual factual magic. There's lots of kinds of magic, and some people just make magic when they speak, and some people make magic when they straighten up a messy room. If you ever walked into a room that's a big mess, and then there's somebody who's like really, really good at making order or calming things down. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of kinds of magic.
Yeah.
But this is based on my grandmother who sewed and she saved, and when she took a needle and thread, she could make magic. She made beautiful things for lots and lots of people. And she started to go into a little business, but my grandfather did not like the idea that his wife had a business because he thought people would think, he can't support the family. So, this was a long time ago. So, they made a deal. She said, well, I tell you what if I just buy things that are luxuries that we wouldn't ordinarily need? And it was agreed. And she set her heart on some dishes, really beautiful dishes, Ainsley china with a blue pattern around the edge and a red rose. Her name was Rose in the middle. And she saved, and all of the money that she made from sewing went to buying those dishes. And that was the magic that Grandma Rose had. I'm not going to tell you the rest of the story.
All right. Well, that's cool. So I mentioned the website, lindamarshall.com. Are there any other places where folks can connect with you online, Linda?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at L.E. Marshall. I'm on Facebook. You can look at Linda Marshall Books. Or if you can find my actual personal Facebook page, that's okay too. And I'm on Instagram. When I tried during the early days of COVID to find one beautiful thing each day and put a picture of it on. It kept me going. So those pictures are somewhere. They're just the way the rays of light reach a certain plant one day or a tree or glitter on the ice.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of The Polio Pioneer, Linda Marshall. Linda, thanks so much for being part of our show.
Jed, thank you. This was really a pleasure, and I've had a great time doing it. I look forward to listening to your podcast, and thank you very much, Jed. What a pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Brian Ray. He'll be back on the show to tell us about Maya and the Very Tall Wall. That's the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. If you are the author of a great children's book, we would love to have you as a guest in the show. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic book. All you need to do is go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button that you'll find at the bottom of the page. Let us know about your great book. We will let you know the next easy steps. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so very wonderful. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Linda Marshall. I want to thank my incredible team, starting with my producer, Fatima Khan, my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto, the newest member of our team, my amazing daughter, Alejandra. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, but most of all, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.